Hello, welcome to this lecture video. So our objective is to answer the question, what is the psychological well-being of the respondents in terms of environmental mastery? So to answer that question, so in the previous video, we were able to follow the statistical treatment or the data analysis or the treatment of the data in the research methodology, which indicates that reversed items, or rather negative items, will be reversed. So we were able to do that in a separate video. And then after that, we computed for the value of mean and tried to determine its level of psychological well-being. So in this video, we are going to generate the table that will answer what is the psychological well-being or the extent of the psychological well-being of the respondents. So to do that, so we were able to get the mean and the standard deviation, remember, in our previous videos. So of course, the manual method is for you to count how many of them, how many of the respondents belong to level 3, level 4, level 1, level 2, until level 6 psychological well-being. But here, we are going to generate the frequency count and percent distribution. So to do that, click Analyze, Descriptive Statistics, and Frequencies. So we will just transfer level and also the mean, and then check statistics, tick mean standard deviation, and click continue. And okay, so this is the table that will show you the frequency of the level of psychological well-being. So as mentioned, our objective is to answer the level of psychological well-being of the student. Well-being of the students in terms in environmental mastery. Okay, so to present that, so we are going to present a table that will show the frequency count and percent distribution of the level of psychological well-being of the students in environmental mastery. And we are also going to present table 2, which will show the means and standard deviations of each of the items of the psychological well-being in questionnaire. In each of the items of the psychological well-being of the students in environmental mastery. So let's go back to our data. So as mentioned, we were able to generate the frequency count and percent, and this is the table that we need. So to copy this, just click right click and then copy, and we are going to paste it below the table. We don't need valid percent and cumulative percent. So initially, of course, you have to check that there is no missing data. So in case that you notice that there is a missing data, so we encountered missing data in case, for example, that, so let's go back to our data set. We were able to activate the last cell or the last row and then remove it. So when we do that, we still activated our respondent number 31. So which means if I regenerate it, so analyze, descriptive stat, frequency, and then click OK. If you notice here, we have a missing one or a missing system one, which will affect rather the percent. So now, instead of 33.3, we have here 32.3. So of course, since our data is 30 and not 31, we have to go back to our data and to check this. And we have to clear this. Right click and clear. For instances that there are really missing data, then it is okay if some of the respondents, of course, we cannot control our respondents if they opted not to answer some of the items. So if they did not place any answer or rating to some of the items, so it would be better if we would just leave it as blank. Okay, let's go back. So that's the difference between the valid percent and the percent. And then for cumulative percent, so this is now the percent from, we have here the top value 33.3 added to 66.7, and it is equal to 100%. So if you notice in our table, the percent and the valid percent here are the same, of course, because we do not have missing data. But in case that there are some missing data, just like what we demonstrated in case that we were able to consider respondent 31 and respondent 31 is not really included, or in cases that based in the encoded data, some of the respondents failed to answer the whole questionnaire, but of course that is a very rare case, then it will not be included here, or it will reflect as missing data. So what we just need is the 3 columns that will show the level of psychological well-being and its frequency and percent. So what are the level? We have very low. So we cannot find it here simply because it is 0, very low, moderately. So let's go back to the questionnaire. So we have very low, moderately low, and then low, and moderately high, high, and very high. Or let's see. So which is lower? Is it the low or the low, moderately low? So you have actually to settle here that the response is low and moderately high. So we will copy this. Low and moderately high. And then the total 30 and 100. So this is the result. So we have here very low, moderately low, low, moderately high, high, and very high. And all the rest is 0. So 0, 0 until, okay. So this is the psychological well-being of our respondents in terms of mastery level. Now for table 2, so means and standard deviation of each of the items of the psychological well-being of the students in environment mastery questionnaire. So in the answering this question, we are not going to use the reversed. So what we are going to do is to use or to stick to the actual data. So analyze descriptive statistics and frequency. So we are going to remove this. What we will place is item 1 to item 14. And statistics, click mean and standard deviation, continue. So you can remove the tick there and okay. So this is what we need. Right click, edit content in separate to window, pivot, transposed row. So that it is now ready to be copied and paste. So what we will do is also to place the overall or the average, that is the mean and the standard deviation. So what is the mean? Let's go back to the generated data. We have here the generated data. Let's go back here. So copy and paste. Oops. So I have to go back to copy it. Copy and go back. Paste. So we need to place the value. The mean is, of course, the what we need to look at is the value of the mean and not the level. So this is what we need. And the standard deviation. Okay. So let's have 3.57 and the standard deviation is 0.334. And what is the meaning of 3.57? Let's go back to the data and let us see this. 3.57 is moderately high. So let us place here moderately high. So this is the average. So when you interpret this, so we can now place the interpretation like saying that majority of the respondents have moderately high psychological well-being in environmental mastery. And 33.3% of them have low psychological well-being in terms of environmental mastery. So on the average, the respondents have moderately high So you can place the value of mean and the standard deviation as a support. Well, psychological well-being of the respondent in environmental mastery. So I repeat, so you can introduce the table first in interpreting. So table 1 shows the frequency count. So you can continue this. Frequency count and percent distribution of the level of psychological well-being of the respondents in environmental mastery. So here, as seen on table 1, majority of the respondents have moderately high psychological well-being in environmental mastery. So you have to place the percent 66.7%. Some were let's see. So some of or the rest, some of the respondents have low psychological or environmental psychological well-being. On average, the psychological well-being of the respondents are moderately high. And then, followed by, introduce again, table 2. Table 2 displays, you can continue that, the means and standard deviations of each of the items of the psychological well-being of the students in environmental mastery. So in presenting this table, we just need 3 columns. So this will be the statements or the items, the means, the mean, the standard deviation, and its 4 column. The last one is the qualitative description. Okay, so you have to place the actual statements here, just like for item 1. Let's go back to item 1. So in general, I feel I am in charge. So this will be placed here. So what is the mean? Let us copy this until the last one, 14. And of course, place it here. So what is statement number 2? So we need again to copy that in the questionnaire. So the demands of everyday life often get me down. So this is a negative statement. So we are going actually to place, let's remove the numbering first. We can do that later on. For the negative items, as mentioned, like this. So let's remove the highlight. We can place asterisk, and then at the bottom of this table, we will place that. Oops. So let's remove this first. It's no longer needed in the table. So let me just transfer this in a separate page. So for instance, this one. So at the bottom, we will place asterisk and indicate negative items. We can also place note that negative items were reversed. The ratings in the negative items were reversed to compute the overall mean. And the overall mean that we are referring is actually found in table 1. So this one. Okay, so what you need to place in the qualitative description, so your basis is if you round off this value, like for instance 2, this is 2. What is the meaning of 2? Going back to the questionnaire again. So what is our questionnaire telling us? That it means that it is somewhat disagree. So we have to place here somewhat disagree. Okay. And also the other one, somewhat disagree. So if you will now come up with the whole table, so you need, do not forget of course the asterisk here. You can interpret this as the respondents somewhat disagree that in general, they feel they are in charge of the situations in their lives. They also somewhat disagree that demands of the everyday life often get them down. And then support this with the value of mean and standard deviation, just like what we did in the first table, wherein we supported the value here with what is found in the table, like that. Okay, next. I actually have here a tricky question. So that is what you're going to do as mentioned in table 1 and table 2. So you have to finish this and then please the interpretation. Now let's go back here. I know that you might observe something in our qualitative description. So we have very low, moderately low, low, moderately high, high, and very high. So after going over with all the process, what do you think is something wrong with our data? So let's go back here in our questionnaire, stating that one is strongly disagree, which means that in qualitative description, it is very low. And number 2 is somewhat disagree. We use moderately low. Slightly disagree is low. Moderately high for slightly agree. Somewhat is high, and strongly agree is very high. Do you think there's nothing wrong with our qualitative description, especially here in the level? Okay. So for your observations, kindly post or answer or comment what is wrong in this qualitative description. And if ever you were able to notice that, so how will you settle it in your data if in case you're using the same questionnaire just like in our questionnaire? But of course, if you are using a different data, what do you think will needs to be settled in case that you commit errors just like here? Okay, so that is my question. And as mentioned, your task is to complete this table 1 and table 2 and try to troubleshoot the problem that I was able to raise. Thank you for watching.